My name is Emily, and for years I buried the month that reshaped my life. I was 11 when my mom flew to Europe, closed the door behind her, and left $10 on the kitchen table like it was enough. 30 days later, when she finally returned, the look on her face turned to horror. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Tap like, subscribe, and stay with me, because what happened next explains who I became and why survival changed me forever. That month did. I was 11 years old. And back then, I believed that if you followed the rules, adults would take care of you. I was a quiet kid, too quiet, according to my teachers. I sat in the front row, raised my hand only when I was sure of the answer, and tried very hard not to cause problems. At home, I did the same thing. I stayed out of the way. I learned early that being easy made my mom's life simpler, and simple was what she wanted. My mom wasn't cruel in obvious ways. She never hit me or screamed every day. Instead, she mastered something called her absence. Even when she was physically in the room, she felt distant, like her mind was always somewhere else. Work, friends, her phone, her next trip. I was background noise in her life, something stable she didn't need to check on often. So when she told me she was going to Europe for a month, I didn't immediately panic. I remember sitting at the kitchen counter, swinging my legs, listening. As she talked about Paris and Rome and how she deserved this break, she said it casually, like she was going to the grocery store instead of across the ocean. "You'll be fine," she said, already scrolling through her phone. "You're old enough." I waited for the rest of the sentence. The part where she explained who would stay with me? An aunt? A neighbor? Someone. But it never came. The morning she left, the house felt rushed and hollow. Suitcases by the door, the smell of coffee, the sharp sound of her heels clicking against the floor. I stood there in my pajamas, hair messy, trying to understand how a normal morning had turned into goodbye. She grabbed her purse, then stopped suddenly and reached into her wallet. She pulled out a single $10 bill and placed it on the kitchen table, smoothing it flat with her fingers. "This should be enough if you're careful," she said. I stared at it. $10. Even at 11, I knew that wasn't much, but I didn't understand how little it really was not yet. "Don't waste it on junk," she added. "I'll be back before you know it." Then she hugged me. It was quick and awkward, like she remembered at the last second that hugs were something moms were supposed to do. The door closed behind her, and just like that, the house went silent. The first few hours didn't feel real. I watched TV expecting her to come back because she'd forgotten something. She always forgot something. But the hours stretched on and the sun started to set. When it got dark, the silence felt heavier, pressing against my chest. That night, I lay in bed listening to every sound, the refrigerator humming, the wind brushing the windows, a car passing by outside. I tried calling her phone. It went straight to voicemail. I told myself she was busy boarding the plane. The next morning, I woke up hungry. I opened the fridge, half a bottle of milk, some expired leftovers, a jar of mustard. That was when it hit me. No one had planned this. Not meals, not supervision, not emergencies, nothing. I held that $10 bill in my hand, like it was fragile. I walked to the corner store and bought the cheapest things I could find. Instant noodles, white bread, a small jar of peanut butter. When the cashier handed me my change, I realized how fast the money disappeared. I went home with my bag of food and a knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. The first few days, I tried to act normal. I went to school. I smiled. I said my mom was traveling for work. I didn't want questions. Questions felt dangerous. At home, I rationed my food, counting slices of bread, breaking noodle packs in half so they'd last longer. By the end of the first week, the $10 was gone. That was the moment my childhood officially ended. Not with a dramatic event, but with an empty wallet, a quiet house, and the realization that no one was coming to help me unless I figured out how to survive on my own. And as the days went on, hunger wasn't the worst part. It was the loneliness. By the second week, hunger stopped being a sharp pain and became something dull and constant, like background noise in my body. It followed me everywhere, into the shower, onto the school bus, into my classroom. I learned how to move slowly so I wouldn't waste energy. I learned how to ignore the way my stomach tightened when I smelled food. School became my only place of normalcy, not because it was kind, but because it was predictable. Bells rang, teachers talked, assignments were handed out. No one asked where my mom was unless I brought it up, and I made sure I never did. I told myself that as long as I blended in, everything would be okay. Lunch was the hardest part of the day. The cafeteria smelled like pizza and fries and warm bread. Kids complained about the food, pushed trays away, threw half-eaten apples into the trash. I sat there with my empty hands folded in my lap, pretending I wasn't hungry, pretending I wasn't watching every bite they took. At first, I told myself I just wasn't hungry. That lie didn't last long. One day, a girl at my table left her unopened milk carton behind. I stared at it for a long time, my heart pounding so loud I was sure someone could hear it. When everyone stood up to leave, I grabbed it and drank it quickly, hiding it under the table like I was doing something illegal. I felt ashamed afterward, and relieved. Mostly relieved. That became my routine. I watched, I waited. I took what no one noticed was missing. A wrapped granola bar here, a piece of fruit there. I told myself it wasn't stealing if it was going in the trash anyway. I needed to believe that. At home, the fridge stayed empty. The house felt bigger every day, like it was expanding to remind me how alone I was inside it. At night, I slept with my bedroom door locked. Not because I was scared of someone breaking in, but because it made me feel less exposed, like I was protecting something that mattered. I tried calling my mom again and again. Sometimes I left voicemails, short ones, .com ones. I didn't want to sound dramatic. I didn't want to give her a reason to be annoyed. "Hi, Mom, it's me, just checking in. Hope you're having fun." She never called back. A neighbor noticed me once, standing in the driveway late at night, staring at the sky. She asked if everything was okay. My heart raced. This was it, I thought. This was where I told the truth, but the words wouldn't come out. "Yeah," I said quickly. "My mom's just traveling." She smiled and nodded, satisfied with that answer. I watched her walk away and something inside me sank. I had been seen and still missed. By the third week, my clothes started to hang differently on my body. My jeans felt loose, my sleeves slid down my arms. I avoided mirrors because I didn't want to see proof of what was happening to me at school. My teacher asked if I was feeling okay. She said I looked tired. I smiled and said I stayed up late reading. She believed me. Adults always believe calm explanations from quiet kids. That was when I realized something terrifying and powerful at the same time. If you don't cause trouble, people don't look too closely, so I disappeared in plain sight. I learned how to be invisible, how to nod, how to smile, how to say I'm fine in a way that made people stop asking questions. I learned that silence could protect you, but it could also trap you. By the end of that week, I was exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. My head felt light sometimes when I stood up. My hands shook when I tried to write. Still, I kept going, because stopping meant admitting that I couldn't do this alone, and I was determined to prove mostly to myself that I could. Up until that point, hunger had been my constant companion, but fear was something I thought I could manage. I told myself the neighborhood was safe. I told myself bad things only happened to people who made noise, who stood out. As long as I stayed quiet, as long as I followed my routines, I would be okay. That illusion shattered one night, just after midnight. I had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on low, using the noise to make the house feel less empty. Sometime later, I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. A dull thump, then another. My heart started racing before my brain could catch up. I muted the TV and held my breath. The sound came again, slow, deliberate. Like footsteps, my entire body went cold. I sat there frozen, listening as the noise moved closer to the front door. I couldn't tell if it was someone outside or just my imagination playing tricks on me. But in that moment, it didn't matter. I was alone. Completely alone. I crept down the hallway and locked my bedroom door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the knob. I slid down onto the floor, my back against the door, and pulled my knees to my chest. I remembered every safety lesson I'd ever been taught and realized none of them applied to an 11-year-old girl with no adult in the house. The noise eventually stopped. Maybe it had never been real. Maybe it was the house settling. I didn't know. I stayed there until the sun came up, too afraid to move, too tired to cry. That night changed something in me. From then on, survival wasn't just about finding food. It was about staying safe. I stopped sleeping in the living room. I kept lights off at night so no one would know the house wasn't empty. I learned which floorboards creaked and how to step around them. I also started lying more when teachers asked why I was tired. I said I was studying. When classmates asked why I never invited anyone over, I said my mom didn't like company. The lies stacked on top of each other until they felt like a second skin by the fourth week. My body felt weak, but my mind felt sharp. Too sharp? I noticed everything's sounds, movements, expressions. Fear had trained me to be alert all the time. And even now, years later, I still struggle to turn that off. I stopped expecting my mom to call instead. I started counting down the days until she came back. Not because I missed her, but because I couldn't keep living like this. I was running on empty physically and emotionally, and I knew something had to give. I didn't know yet that the breaking point wouldn't be mine. It would be hers. The last week felt endless. Every morning, I woke up hoping something would be different. And every morning it wasn't. My body felt heavier. Like gravity had quietly increased while no one was watching. Walking to school took more effort. Climbing the bus steps left me short of breath. I learned how to move carefully, how to sit down before the dizziness came. By then, there was nothing left in the house. No bread, no noodles. No change between couch cushions. The $10 my mom had left behind felt like a cruel joke. A reminder of how little planning had gone into leaving me alone. At school, I relied entirely on what I could find. Sometimes that meant a half-eaten apple someone forgot. Sometimes it meant pretending I wasn't hungry while my vision blurred at the edges. I drank water constantly, trying to trick my stomach into believing it was full. I stopped going outside after school. I went straight home and locked the door behind me, sitting in the quiet house and staring at the calendar on the wall. I crossed off each day with a shaky hand, counting down to my mom's return like it was a rescue date. 7 days left. 6.5. Wondered what would happen if she didn't come back on time. The thought made my chest tighten. I realized I hadn't told a single adult the truth. Not one. If something happened to me, no one would know why. One afternoon, my teacher pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay at home. She said I looked pale. She said she was worried. For a moment, I almost told her everything. I imagined the words spilling out how my mom left, how there was no food, how scared I was at night. But fear stopped me. Fear of getting my mom in trouble, fear of being taken away, fear of being the kid everyone whispered about. I'm just tired, I said quietly. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Try to get some rest. I nodded back, ashamed and relieved all at once. The night before my mom came home, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to my heartbeat, wondering what I would say when she walked through the door. Would I tell her the truth? Would she even care? Part of me hoped she'd see it on her own, that she'd notice the empty fridge, the weight I'd lost, the way I flinched at every sound. Part of me feared she wouldn't notice anything at all. When morning came, I felt strangely calm, like I had already used up all my fear. I didn't know yet that when my mom finally walked back into that house, she wouldn't need me to explain a single thing because the house would speak for me. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I heard the sound of keys in the lock. For a split second, my body didn't react. It was like my brain needed time to remember what that sound meant. Then the door opened and my mom stepped inside, rolling her suitcase behind her, talking into her phone about delayed flights and bad coffee. She sounded happy, relaxed, rested. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the floor, and that's when she finally looked at me. Her smile faded just a little at first. Her eyes moved over my face, my arms, my clothes. I saw confusion flicker across her expression, followed by something closer to concern. But she still didn't understand. Not yet. Hey, she said. I'm back. I tried to smile. My face wouldn't cooperate. She walked further into the house, still distracted, still half laughing into her phone until she stopped. The laughter cut off mid-sentence. Her eyes locked onto the kitchen. The table was bare. The counters were empty. The refrigerator door, when she opened it, revealed nothing but shelves and a faint smell of old air. She turned around slowly, her face draining of color. Then she looked at me, again, really looked this time. I saw it hit her all at once. The weight loss. The dark circles under my eyes. The way I stood, like I was bracing myself for something bad to happen. Her suitcase tipped over and fell to the floor. No, she whispered, then louder. No, this can't be happening. Her voice shook as she stepped toward me, reaching out like she was afraid I might disappear. Emily, what is this? What happened? The words came out of me in a rush, like a dam breaking. I told her everything. The $10, the empty fridge, the nights alone, the hunger, the fear, the lying, the waiting. Her face crumpled. She sank into a chair and covered her mouth with her hands, staring at the floor like it might explain how this had happened. She kept saying she didn't realize. She kept saying she thought I'd be fine, that I was so responsible. Something inside me snapped. I was 11, I said quietly. That was the first time she cried. The house felt heavy with everything that had gone unsaid for an entire month. And as she sat there shaking, I realized something important. Her shock didn't erase what she had done. Her tears didn't give me those days back. What she saw when she came home wasn't just an empty house. It was the consequences of her choices. Once the words were out, there was no way to put them back. The house felt different after that, like it knew something irreversible had happened. My mom kept apologizing over and over, her voice cracking each time she said my name. But the apologies floated in the air without landing anywhere solid. Within hours, things moved faster than I expected. She called my aunt. I could hear her crying through the phone, saying she'd made a mistake, that she hadn't known how bad it was. My aunt arrived that evening, took one look at me and went completely silent. That silence scared me more than yelling ever could. By the next day, adults were talking in hushed voices around me. Questions were asked. Notes were taken. I was given juice and crackers and told to sit down while people figured things out. Social services were contacted, not in a dramatic raid, but in a quiet, official way that made everything feel suddenly very real. I answered questions honestly. How long had I been alone? How much money was I left with? Did I feel safe? Each answer felt like a confession, even though I knew I had done nothing wrong. My mom sat nearby, crying softly. Unable to look at me, I didn't go back to living with her right away. I stayed with my aunt for a while, sleeping in a bed that didn't feel like mine, eating meals that felt too big, too frequent. My body didn't know how to trust food yet. I ate slowly, afraid it would disappear if I didn't. People treated me differently after that. Teachers watched me more closely. Relatives checked in more often. Everyone seemed determined not to let me disappear again. My relationship with my mom changed permanently. She tried to fix things: therapy appointments, careful meals, constant check-ins, but something had cracked between us. I loved her, but I didn't feel safe depending on her anymore. That kind of trust doesn't come back just because someone feels sorry. What stayed with me the most wasn't the hunger or the fear, it was the realization of how easy it had been for me to be overlooked. I learned that being quiet doesn't protect you. It makes you invisible, and invisibility can be dangerous. That month followed me into adulthood. I grew up fast after that. I became independent early, obsessed with having savings, food in the fridge, backup plans for everything. I promised myself I would never put another child in the position I had been in, ever assume they'd be fine, without actually checking. I'm in my 30s now, and there are days when that 11-year-old version of me still feels very close. I see her every time I check the fridge before going to bed, every time I feel uneasy when the house gets too quiet. Trauma doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it shows up in habits, in instincts, in the way you prepare for disasters that may never come. For a long time, I carried anger toward my mom. Not explosive anger, but something colder, something careful. It took years to understand that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting that what happened shaped me but didn't have to control me. My mom and I have a relationship now, but it's different. Honest, boundaried, built on awareness instead of assumptions. She knows what she did, and I know what I survived. I share this story not for sympathy, but as a reminder. Children remember everything. They remember who showed up. They remember who didn't, and even short absences can leave lifelong marks if you've made it this far. Thank you for listening to my story. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been left to grow up too soon? Did anyone ever assume you'd be fine when you weren't? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for spending your time here with me today. I hope you're safe, supported, and never forgotten.